See the question number 26. Okay, a lot of students find these graphical questions to be difficult and they're not able to understand what are these questions. Okay, so first of all, in board examination, one of the most important topic is the graphs of inverse trigonometry. Okay, graphs of inverse trigonometric function, inverse trigonometric functions. Okay, so sine inverse x, you should know how to draw the graph, memorize. Cos inverse x, tan inverse x, cot inverse x, cosecant and secant. The favorite ones are secant inverse and cosecant inverse. These are two favorite graphs. If you memorize this, right, you already know what these graphs are, which means you have to memorize them from NCERT. They're already given. Then it's very easy question. So once I have a look at this question and I know inverse trigonometry, because it says 1 minus 1, if I have memorized the secant inverse graph, my answer to this is a secant inverse x graph. That simple. Okay, then give a branch other than the principal value of the given function. This is a standard question in NCERT. How to find this, a branch which is other than the main principal branch. Okay, we will talk about it. Then let's talk about this. Okay, so we have identified what is fx. Fx plus gx is equal to pi by 2, right? So secant inverse x is fx plus gx is equal to pi by 2. So gx is equal to pi by 2 minus secant inverse x is equal to cosecant inverse x. Properties of inverse function, right? Sine inverse x plus cos inverse x is equal to. So you have to memorize all the properties. If you don't memorize graphs, you don't memorize properties in inverse trigonometric functions, it's very difficult for you to solve a question. You cannot even identify, because this is part of memorization process. You cannot do research and development in a board paper on inverse function graphs. You have to memorize them. So the moment you see a question, okay, where such graphs are available, you should know it's an inverse trigonometric function. There are 6 graphs in all which you need to do. Okay, so we have done part A, part C. Let's now do part number B. Okay, so before I move into the next topic of general value and principal value, I want you to memorize the chart which is in front of you. If you don't memorize this chart, forget this question. You cannot do any question of inverse trigonometry if you don't have understanding of range, domain, etc. Whatever chart is in front of you has to be memorized. It takes you 1 hour of effort to learn this. If you don't want to do this effort, then forget your dream of a career. It is important that you memorize this chart. And I'm again saying, if you don't memorize this chart, good luck to you. You will fail to do the question on inverse trigonometry. Let's move to the next topic. Alright, so this is the second chart you need to memorize. Right? It gives you the standard range and domain for the sine, cosine, tan functions, which are normal functions. So you should also know about this graph. Thank you. I have done is I have opened NCERT, but you can also open NCERT exemplar and you will find these charts, inverse function, right? And these have to be memorized. You can see the domain of sine inverse x is minus 1 to 1. The range is minus pi by 2. Range means the value of y, which is on the y-axis, right? On the secant, we saw 0 to pi, right? This is what we saw, if you remember, right? We saw secant inverse to be this, and we said pi by 2 will not be included. So range is always on the y-axis and domain is on the x-axis. Okay, and we also said that the numbers greater than minus 1 sorry, numbers less than -1 on the left hand side are the domain of secant inverse x, and number on the right hand side are the domain of the secant inverse x. So -1 to 1, secant inverse has no value. Memorize the principal range at least from NCERT, right? Now let me take you to the graph. It says graph of inverse trigonometric functions, right? So you have to memorize all these properties. Also, what is written on the right hand side, right? X belongs to minus pi by 2, pi by 2. All of this needs to be memorized. You can see again the range of x is given again, right? 0 to pi minus pi by 2, secant inverse x. So unless you remember this, it is not possible to solve these questions. They will keep on coming. These are the properties you can see which you need to memorize. It is given in NCERT exemplar also very neatly. So if you're doing maths, do the theory from NCERT exemplar. Okay, you will find it extremely easy to learn maths from NCERT exemplar theory. Look at this graph, right? So the questions on graph are available. What is required is practice and memorization along with that, because inverse trigonometric function, there are certain charts, if you memorize, they help you solve the problem faster. Okay, so please go ahead and do graphical questions also. Apart, and the way to do this is go to NCERT exemplar and open it and read it very easily. Take one day just to memorize the chart and the graphs. They are very, very important. They give you marks because they are going to come. So I hope this helps. Let's continue with our further discussion. To the concept of general value. And after I complete this, there is still video left. So continue to watch. Don't stop after watching this. Okay. So let's see this. Okay. The general value of inverse is denoted by secant inverse x, where theta is the angle. We already know this, right? When we are finding secant inverse x, we are actually finding some angle. Principal value range of secant function. Go to the chart. You will see that the value of secant inverse function range is 0 to pi by 2, then pi to 2 pi, but pi by 2 is not included. So there is no equal to sign here, right? So memorize. This is, so if you don't know the value, the principal value of secant function, you're gone. So first of all, memorize all the principal values. Let's go to the, and you can see because secant is undefined at theta is equal to pi by 2. I will also talk about it. Maybe I have mentioned secant inverse there, but ignore in my later part. It is secant theta. Now, so first part is over, right? This is your principal value range. The question says we don't want this. What we want is a general expression. General expression is theta has this value and theta has this value. This is called the principal value. But if you want to find more angles that satisfy this condition, it is written like this. You can put the value of n to be any integer. You can write n is equal to 1, -1, 2, -2 and stuff like that, right? You can also notice, so that will give you more values apart from the principal value branch, because you need other values also, right? The question is, don't give us the principal value range. Give us other values of theta which are applicable to secant inverse, where it is valid. It holds good. So you can see it holds good in this. Something very similar is available for cosecant. Also memorize it. Very important. Put the value of n here. You can get another value of the theta, another range, right? Also you notice it says that the secant function has a period 2 pi. This accounts for the periodic nature of trigonometry. And we know trigonometric functions, even though it is an inverse function, has periodicity 2 pi. So I hope you found this also very useful, that this part is the principal part and then there is a general part. If you go to NCERT exemplar, all of this is written. Just read NCERT exemplar if you want to be good in inverse trigonometric function. The complete theory is beautifully explained. Just go and do that. I hope this helped you. Continue to listen to the later part of the video also. Something very similar being repeated, but I have written it down. So you have to listen to the next part also. Thank you very much. discussion on the topic of principal value and general value. If you see this graph of secant inverse x, what you notice is this. You should know how to read this graph. The value of x is always greater than 1, right, on this side. So if you see, y-axis is all angles. This angle is pi by 2. So it is very clear that the angle approaches pi by 2 here, but never touches pi by 2. Reason, if you do secant inverse pi by 2, you won't be able to get an answer. There is no value which exists. Like it is like 1 upon cos pi by 2 is undefined, right? So secant inverse pi by 2 is also undefined. Now, so therefore, what you notice is pi by 2 is never part of secant inverse as far as the y goes, right? The range. So 0 to pi, it is there, but pi by 2 is not included. The other is, if you notice, x is basically greater than 1. You can see the x is moving towards right hand side, or x is less than minus 1. That is very clear in the graph. Okay, I will come to the principal value and the general value. So to write the general value of the secant inverse, what is that you need to do? You say, okay, secant inverse x. Okay, so the angle which satisfies this graph, which you saw, okay, the least angle, the smallest angle which satisfies this equation between 0 to pi, it's called the principal value. So this theta lies between 0 and pi, but theta cannot be pi by 2. All this is written in NCERT. You just need to memorize that for secant inverse, what is the behavior, what is the principal value. This is the principal value. What is the general value? So this is not the only angle which will satisfy secant inverse. Like you have cos theta is equal to 1 by 2. There is no one value, right? It can be 30 degrees, it can be 210 degrees, etc., etc. So cos of fourth quadrant, right? So you could have an angle like, so where is it? Where is this? This is at 60 degree, right? So if you have 330 degrees, the value will repeat. So secant inverse x may have a value, right? The value first repeats between 0 to pi, and then it repeats. Where does it repeat is the question. That is the general solution. So the general solution will look like this. Theta is equal to 2n pi plus minus theta, where theta is the smallest possible value. So if you notice this question, okay, if you notice the question they have asked, give a branch or other than the principal value branch. That's your answer. The general equation. This is another branch. Now you can put the value of n to be equal to something, right? So this is theta n. Put value of n is equal to 1. Put value of whatever, right? So there are two aspects. One, every inverse function has a principal value. Every inverse function has a general solution to it. Principal value is part of the general solution, but is the least angle that satisfies this. But there can be other angles, theta 1, theta 2, theta 3, many angles like you saw in cos. The equation, so what you do, you memorize all the general solutions. For cosecant x, memorize. For secant inverse x, memorize. For tan inverse x, memorize graph, general solution, principal solution. It takes you 1 hour of writing effort to memorize this, and you will get confirmed marks. It's a guarantee that you will get full marks, and this will be useful in your entrance examination also. JEE mains, for example, has a question on inverse function. They will ask you a graphical question, and same is true for board nowadays. They're asking. So they're asking algebraic questions which are based on properties. They're also asking questions on domain, range, principal value, general value, graph of an inverse function. Please revise it. It's very simple. I will keep on coming with these topics. Go and watch my live classes. You already have all of this available in the live classes. So I hope this session was useful and very, very meaningful when it comes to exam preparation.